I still remember the sound her teeth made when they hit the concrete. It wasn't loud, more like a muted click, but it's the kind of sound that sticks in your head, plays itself over whenever things go quiet. My daughter's face hit the curb right in front of our house. The woman who pushed her stood frozen, one hand still raised, her mouth open like she couldn't believe she'd actually done it. I was 20 feet away when it happened. I didn't shout, didn't run. I just watched, the world narrowing to the sight of my little girl's body curling into itself, the blood pooling under her lip. It's strange what your brain does in moments like that. Some part of me was already writing the report, cataloging the scene, identifying witnesses, assessing injuries. The rest of me was just a father watching his kid bleed. The woman didn't know who I was. Not yet. Before that day, our neighborhood looked like a promise. We moved into Ash Grove Estates 8 years ago, when my wife and I thought we'd finally found peace after 2 decades of city noise and rotating night shifts. The streets had names like Maple Crossing and Serenity Way, the kind of names meant to convince you you'd arrived somewhere good. The houses matched in height and tone, beige siding, white trim, 2-car garages. People waved from driveways, dogs barked behind fences, sprinklers clicked in rhythm at sunset. For the first few months, I caught myself thinking, maybe this is what normal looks like. My daughter, Lily, was 6 when we moved in. She was born with cerebral palsy, mild, but enough to make walking a little unsteady. She used braces on both legs and a walker when she was tired. The kids at her new school were kind, or at least curious in the harmless way kids can be. Lily loved to be outside. Every evening she'd roll her walker down the sidewalk to the corner of our cul-de-sac, where the mailboxes stood in a neat row. She'd wave at everyone, even the ones who didn't wave back. My wife, Sarah, taught at the local elementary school. I worked at the precinct downtown, chief of police for the county. It's not something I ever talked about with the neighbors. Around here, people like to talk about lawn height, not law enforcement. The HOA president, a woman named Margaret Hanley, lived 3 houses down. Everyone called her Maggie, though she introduced herself with a firmness that made it clear she preferred Margaret. She was in her late 50s, retired from banking, and had the kind of posture that made every conversation feel like a performance review. At first, we were polite. She brought cookies the week we moved in, oatmeal raisin hard as bricks, and a copy of the HOA rulebook. "You'll want to familiarize yourself," she said, smiling without warmth. I remember thanking her, telling her we were just happy to be here. She nodded and glanced at Lily, who was sitting on the porch steps, legs braced and smiling. Margaret's smile flickered for half a second, then she turned back to me. "Children play better indoors," she said, and left. That was the first time I felt the undercurrent, that quiet edge people get when they think someone like you doesn't quite belong. Still, life went on. We kept the lawn trimmed, the trash cans pulled in on time. Lily made friends with a girl across the street, Abby, who had a scooter and a habit of talking too fast. They'd sit on the curb together, trading stickers and secrets. Every morning before work, I'd see them waving from the driveway. Lily would always say, "Bye, Daddy." "Don't forget to be safe." And every time I'd say it back, a little joke between us that started after she overheard one of my officers saying it to me. For a long time, that was our rhythm. On weekends, Sarah and I worked in the garden while Lily played with Abby. We'd wave to neighbors, share small talk about the weather, the HOA newsletters, the latest complaint about someone's fence color. Then came the letters. The first one was taped to our front door. Reminder: personal mobility devices are not permitted to obstruct sidewalks. This includes walkers, scooters, and similar equipment. Sarah read it out loud at the dinner table, her voice trembling somewhere between disbelief and anger. "She uses it to walk," she said. "It's not a scooter." I remember shrugging, trying to stay calm. "I'll talk to Margaret." Probably just a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. Margaret started showing up more often, standing across the street, arms folded, watching Lily. If Lily's walker paused too long near a driveway, Margaret would appear. If the kids drew chalk on the sidewalk, Margaret took pictures. It became clear she wasn't policing rules. She was policing us. Sarah wanted to move. I told her we'd ride it out. People like Margaret always find someone new to target eventually. But I was wrong, because Margaret didn't move on. She dug in, and in the end, it cost my daughter her smile. It started with a fence. We'd been meaning to install one ever since Lily's therapy dog, Scout, came into our lives. A golden retriever with more patience than most people I know. The backyard was open to the neighbors on both sides, separated only by shrubs. Scout liked to wander, and Lily couldn't chase him if he ran. So, one Saturday, I rented a post digger and started marking the line. By the second hole, Margaret appeared. She always announced herself the same way, with the sound of her sandals scraping against the curb, slow and deliberate, like she wanted you to know she was coming. "Morning," I said, straightening up. She looked at the stakes in the ground. I don't recall any fence approvals being submitted. "I emailed the HOA 2 weeks ago," I told her. "Use the form on the website." Her eyes narrowed. I didn't receive it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the confirmation email. She didn't look at it. "Even if you did send it," she said, "fences have to match neighborhood aesthetics. White vinyl, 4 feet, you're digging for wood." "It's a cedar privacy fence," I said, "just for the backyard." "Not allowed," she said. I could feel the heat rising under my collar. I'd dealt with people like her my whole career, the kind who spoke in absolutes because compromise felt like losing. "Then I'll bring it up at the next meeting," I said, keeping my voice even. She gave a thin smile. "Or you could save yourself the trouble and stop digging." Then she turned and walked away. Sarah came out from the porch when she left. "She's going to make this hell, isn't she?" "Probably," I said, "but we'll do it the right way." Paper trail. Everything we did. I filed the form again, this time CCing the entire HOA board. I attached blueprints, photos, even the vendor's license. A week later, the approval came through, conditional, but valid. When the fence went up, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next note came 2 days later. Folded, typed, anonymous, though the wording might as well have been signed Margaret. "The constant barking and outdoor activity are disrupting neighborhood harmony. Please keep your animal and child indoors after 6 p.m. Sarah found it tucked into Lily's mailbox. She cried that night, not loud, just quietly into my shoulder while Lily slept upstairs. "Why does she hate us so much?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, though I did. People like Margaret needed order, and Lily didn't fit into her picture of it. I thought about confronting her directly, but every instinct told me it would backfire. So I did what I'd been trained to do: document. I took photos of every note, saved every email, kept a file. Then came the day everything broke. It was late August. Hot. The kind of heat that sticks to your shirt. I'd just come home from a long shift, still in uniform. Sarah was at the grocery store. Lily was outside with Abby, chalking hopscotch squares on the sidewalk. I was standing in the doorway sipping coffee, watching them laugh. Scout lay in the grass, tail thumping. Then I saw Margaret's car. She pulled up next to the curb, window rolling down. I could see her lips moving, but not what she said. Abby stood still. Lily turned confused. I stepped out onto the porch. Margaret got out of the car. "You girls can't be blocking the sidewalk," she said. "People walk here." "There's no one walking," Abby said. "Don't talk back," Margaret snapped. I started down the driveway, but slowly, not wanting to escalate. Lily tried to move her walker off the sidewalk. The chalk dust smeared under the wheels. She was doing her best, but her leg braces caught and she stumbled. That's when Margaret reached out. I still don't know if she meant to push her or just move the walker, but her hand hit Lily's shoulder hard enough to knock her sideways. Lily's head struck the curb with that soft click I can't forget. For a moment, everyone froze, even Margaret. Then Abby screamed. I was already running. By the time I got to Lily, there was blood on her chin and 2 of her front teeth were gone. She was crying, trying to say my name, but it came out broken. Margaret's face had gone pale. I didn't mean to. I looked up at her. Step back. Her mouth opened again, but no sound came. I pulled my phone from my pocket and called for paramedics. My hands were steady, voice calm like I was on any other scene. But inside, something in me cracked open. The neighbors started coming out. Doors opened, phones came up. Someone called out, "What happened?" Margaret backed toward her car. "She fell," she said, her voice shaking. "It was an accident." I didn't answer. I just kept my hand on Lily's shoulder until the ambulance came. When they lifted her onto the stretcher, she reached for me. "Daddy, don't let her come near me," she said. "I won't," I told her. Margaret was still there when the paramedics left. She looked at me like she was waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I just said one sentence. "You're going to regret this." At the hospital, the fluorescent lights made everything look colder than it was. Lily's room smelled faintly of antiseptic and grape-flavored numbing gel. The nurse said it was meant for children, but the sweetness only made my stomach turn. She lay in the bed, her small face swollen around the mouth, lips stitched in 2 places. They told us her teeth could be replaced later with implants. It was meant to be reassuring. It wasn't. Sarah sat beside her, holding a damp cloth to her forehead. She hadn't spoken since we arrived. Every now and then she'd brush a strand of hair from Lily's cheek, her hand trembling. When the doctor left, she looked at me and said, "You're not going to let her get away with this, are you?" "No," I said quietly. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something slower, heavier, like a tide rising from somewhere deep inside me. I filed the report that night. I didn't put my name on it. That would come later. I wanted the process clean, no bias, no shortcuts. I knew how this needed to go, but small towns don't stay quiet for long. By morning, the story had already started moving through the neighborhood. Some said Lily tripped. Some said Margaret had barely touched her. Others said they'd seen me lose it and call her names, which I hadn't. That's how rumors work. They don't start with lies. They start with doubt. When I drove home the next day, a folded paper was taped to our front door again. This community will not tolerate harassment or false accusations. Please remember, HOA members are volunteers deserving of respect. No signature, but I recognize the same printer font, the same spacing. Sarah read it and tore it in half. "She's trying to make herself the victim," she said. "She's trying to control the story," I said. I'd seen it before, in cases where the guilty person got ahead of the narrative, painted themselves as the misunderstood party. It worked more often than it should. That week, the HOA called a special meeting. Margaret wasn't leading it, but she was there, sitting stiffly at the front table. Her arm was in a sling, though no one could explain why. When I walked in, the room went quiet. The sound of my boots on the tile floor seemed to echo. Sarah stayed home with Lily. The vice president, a man named Paul with a nervous smile, cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss recent events in our community and ensure everyone feels safe." Safe? I almost laughed. Margaret spoke next. "What happened was a tragic accident," she said. I've been deeply shaken by it, but I'm also concerned about the threats I've received since. She looked at me as she said it. Threats? I said. She hesitated, then nodded. Notes on my car. Someone shouting at me from a passing vehicle. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, but I didn't write any notes. And I certainly didn't shout. Paul shifted uncomfortably. We're not assigning blame, he said. We just want to restore peace. Peace doesn't come without accountability, I said. The silence after that felt heavy. People stared down at their hands, pretending to read the agenda. When the meeting ended, Margaret walked past me. She stopped for just a moment, low enough for only me to hear. You're not the chief of anything here, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because later that night she'd find out exactly who I was. The investigation moved slowly, like everything in county bureaucracy. I kept my distance, let the detectives handle it. But every time they called, I could hear the hesitation in their voices. It's not easy investigating your boss's neighborhood. They interviewed Abby first. Her statement was clear. Margaret pushed Lily. Unprovoked, they found chalk residue on the woman's shoes that matched the colors on the sidewalk. The forensics didn't matter much. It was the testimony that did. Still, Margaret denied everything. Said Lily lost her balance, and she reached to help. By the second week, Margaret had a lawyer. A loud one. He accused us of slander, of turning the neighborhood against her. Meanwhile, Lily wouldn't go outside. The sight of the sidewalk made her flinch. The walker stayed folded in the corner of her room. She spoke less, too. At night, I'd hear her whispering to Scout, her voice small and uneven. Am I broken, boy? Scout would nuzzle her hand and she'd laugh just enough to break my heart. Sarah tried to stay strong, but I could see the toll. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her coffee, staring through the window at the street. Every car that slowed down made her shoulders tighten. One night, she said, you should have arrested her. I couldn't, I said, not right there. Why not? You've arrested people for less because I'm not her judge. I'm her neighbor. For now, she looked at me for a long time, then said, You're still thinking like a chief, not a father. That one cut deep, because maybe she was right. I'd spent my life learning how to separate emotion from duty, how to see people as facts on paper. But when the person who hurt your child lives 3 houses down, the line blurs. A week later, Margaret filed a complaint against me, claimed I was abusing authority and intimidating a private citizen. Internal Affairs called me in. It wasn't formal, just a conversation, but it stung. The officers knew me, respected me, yet I could see the shift in their eyes. A whisper of, maybe he went too far. When I got home that night, someone had thrown eggs at our fence. The white shells stuck to the wood like symbols of mockery. Sarah found another note in the mailbox the next morning. Not everything needs to be about justice. Some things are about knowing your place. She wanted to call the news. I told her no, not yet. I didn't want Lily to grow up seeing her face on a screen attached to that pain. Instead, I focused on the case. I sent photos, reports, witness statements to the prosecutor. Every page built a wall around the truth. But Margaret was relentless. She hosted neighborhood safety gatherings, conveniently excluding us. She sent newsletters about false accusations harming community morale. Each word chipped away at our peace. Then came the day Sarah found Lily sitting by the window, holding her walker. She said she wants to throw it away, Sarah told me, voice cracking. When I asked Lily why, she said, if I don't use it, maybe people won't get mad. I had no words for that, none that would make sense to a 10-year-old who'd already learned the world could punish her just for existing differently. That night, I went for a walk. Past Margaret's house, past the street where the chalk had washed away in the rain. Her blinds were open. She was sitting at her table, sipping wine, smiling at her laptop screen. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder, clarity. She thought she'd won, but she'd forgotten something. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to do what it always does: find its way out. It happened 6 weeks after the incident. The morning started quiet. A thin fog rolling off the yards, sprinklers ticking in the distance. For the first time since everything happened, Lily said she wanted to go outside. "Just to the mailbox," she said. "Scout can come too." Sarah looked at me, hesitant, but nodded. "Okay, sweetie." Just the mailbox, I followed from the porch, coffee in hand, pretending not to watch. Lily moved slowly, her braces clicking softly against the pavement, Scout trotting beside her. For a second, I thought maybe this was it, the turning point. Maybe things would start to heal. Then Margaret came out. She was wearing her gardening gloves, pruning shears in hand, trimming the bushes along her driveway. She saw Lily and froze. The air between them thickened, heavy with all that hadn't been said. Lily hesitated but kept walking. Scout wagged his tail, oblivious to the tension. Margaret straightened up, frowning. "She shouldn't be out unsupervised," she said loudly enough for me to hear. I walked down the steps. "She's fine, Margaret." Her lips pressed tight. "There are rules about animals and children in public areas. She's not in a public area. She's at her mailbox. That sidewalk belongs to the community." I set my coffee down on the hood of my truck. "And she's part of it." That should have been the end of it, but she couldn't stop herself. "She's already caused enough trouble," she muttered. "You people don't know when to quit." I took a step closer. "Say that again." Margaret looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time since the incident. I said, "Maybe if you raised her properly, none of this would have happened." The world went silent. Even the sprinklers seemed to stop. For a moment, I saw nothing but the line of her mouth, the way her words hung there like a match above gasoline. Sarah's voice echoed from the porch. "Don't." But I was already moving. I didn't touch her. I didn't have to. I walked until I was close enough for her to see the shake in my hands. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I said quietly. "What you took from her?" She laughed, short, nervous, like someone trying to convince herself she wasn't afraid. "You're trying to scare me." "No," I said, "I'm trying to make you understand." Behind me, Lily called out, "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. I turned back to her, saw her clutching Scout's leash, eyes wide, and something inside me broke open. I realized this wasn't about Margaret anymore. It never really had been. It was about the choice between justice and rage, between the man I'd promised to be and the one I was about to become. So I stepped back. "You should go inside, Margaret," I said. She blinked, confused. "What?" "Inside," I repeated, "now." Then I went home and made a call. Not as a father, not as a neighbor, as the chief. By that evening, uniformed officers were walking up her driveway. Not mine, not my people. County officers from a neighboring jurisdiction. I'd requested it that way. She opened the door halfway, still in her gardening gloves. When she saw the badges, her mouth fell open. They handed her the summons. Second-degree assault and battery of a minor. Her lawyer protested the charge the next morning, but it held. Abby's testimony, combined with physical evidence, sealed it. The prosecutor moved forward. The neighborhood turned into a pressure cooker. Half the people avoided us. The other half brought casseroles, apologies, whispers of, "We didn't know." But it wasn't about sides anymore. It was about the truth being seen, finally. The trial wasn't long. Margaret's lawyer tried to paint it as an accident, a misunderstanding. He called it a moment of misjudgment. When Abby took the stand, she said, she pushed her because she was mad about the chalk. Then the prosecutor showed the photos of Lily's injuries, the chalk-stained shoes, the letters, the surveillance footage from a neighbor's doorbell cam, a grainy clip showing Margaret's arm extending toward Lily. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. When the verdict came, guilty of misdemeanor assault, Margaret's expression didn't change. She looked at me across the courtroom like she still believed she was the one wronged. The judge ordered community service, probation, anger management classes. To me, it felt small, but justice rarely feels like enough. Afterward, she walked up to me in the hallway. "You ruined my life," she said. I looked at her for a long time. "You did that yourself." The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Lily healed, but slower than I hoped. She learned to smile again, though it was different, a little guarded, like she was afraid someone might take it away. One afternoon, she asked, "Did she say sorry?" I shook my head. "Not yet." She thought about that for a second, then said, "That's okay. I forgive her anyway." That's when I realized how much stronger she was than I'd ever be. Sarah started volunteering at the hospital, reading to kids who were scared or hurt. She said it helped her remember that not all pain stays pain. Some of it turns into purpose. As for me, I stopped attending HOA meetings. They sent letters, invitations, even a formal apology once, printed on letterhead. I never replied. Margaret moved out 6 months later. Her house sat empty for a long time, for sale, sign, bleaching in the sun. When someone new moved in, they planted tulips along the driveway where Lily once fell. Sometimes, when I walk Scout past, I stop and look at them, those bright yellow petals rising from the soil like proof that time keeps going, even when we don't feel ready for it. But the breaking point wasn't really that day on the sidewalk, or even in court. It came later, months after, when Lily handed me a folded note she'd found in her desk at school. It was one of the old HOA notices, the kind Margaret used to tape to our door. Across the top, Lily had written in careful, uneven handwriting, "Rules for Kindness 1. Don't touch people who didn't ask. 2. Say sorry even if it's hard. 3. If someone's different, that's not bad. It's just them. 4. If you hurt someone, help them heal." She looked up at me and said, "Can we hang it on the fridge?" I nodded, too full to speak. That was the real justice, not the kind written in legal codes or verdicts, but the kind a child can still believe in after the world's tried to take it from her. The months after the trial felt strange, quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that follows a storm, where the air still smells like rain and everything feels unsettled. Lily's laughter came back little by little, like a light flickering on after a long power outage. Her new teeth were temporary, small crowns until she was old enough for implants, but she smiled anyway. She'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror, touch the edge of her lip, and say, "Almost good as new." Sarah and I didn't correct her. Scout stayed close to her all the time now. If she went upstairs, he followed. If she went outside, he stayed between her and the street. It was like he understood something about protection that even humans sometimes forgot. The HOA went quiet too. Margaret's name disappeared from all the newsletters. Paul took over as interim president, though he kept a low profile. No more notes on doors, no more reminders. Neighbors started stopping by again, bringing casseroles, offering small talk, pretending they hadn't avoided eye contact for months. I didn't hold it against them. Fear makes people do strange things. Still, something in me had changed. For 20 years, I'd built my life around control, knowing the rules, enforcing them, trusting that justice was a steady thing if you just followed the process. But standing there in my own neighborhood, watching my daughter heal from something that should never have happened, I realized rules don't protect people. People do. One evening, I was grilling in the backyard when Paul came by. He lingered near the fence, shifting from foot to foot. "Didn't think you'd still be here," he said. "Where else would I go?" He nodded toward Margaret's old house. "Some folks said you'd move, start over somewhere new." I flipped the chicken, watched the smoke rise. "This is my home. She doesn't get to take that from us." He hesitated, then said, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We should have said something sooner." "Maybe," I said, "but at least you're saying it now." He left after that, and I stood there a long time listening to the sound of kids riding bikes down the street, something I hadn't heard in months. That night, I sat on the porch with Sarah. The air was cool, the sky streaked orange. Lily was upstairs reading. "You think we'll ever be normal again?" she asked. I took a sip of my coffee. "Maybe not the old normal, but something better, maybe." She nodded slowly. "You still think about it?" "Every day," I said, "but it hurts less when I see her smile." We sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for words. Lily started drawing again that fall. She'd stopped after the incident, said her hands felt shaky. But one afternoon, I found her at the kitchen table with her sketchbook open, a box of colored pencils spread around her. She was drawing a house, ours. Scout in the yard, flowers in the window, and all of us standing out front. I noticed something small but powerful. She'd drawn the sidewalk too, but she'd colored it in bright pink and blue chalk. When I asked her why, she said, "So it doesn't look scary anymore." It's hard to describe how something that simple can break you in the best way. As winter came, life settled into a new rhythm. The nights got longer, but somehow the house felt warmer. Sarah decorated the fence with lights, small white ones that glowed like stars. Lily helped hang them, using her walker as a steady base to reach higher. For the first time in a long while, she didn't look fragile. She looked determined. And maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting what hurt you, but learning to walk beside it without fear. I still saw Margaret occasionally. The court had ordered her to attend community service at the local shelter, which happened to be where Sarah volunteered. One afternoon, she came home quiet, eyes red. "What happened?" I asked. "She said sorry," Sarah whispered, "not to me, but to Lily." She explained how Margaret had walked up, voice shaking, eyes down. "I know it doesn't fix anything," she'd said, "but I'm sorry for what I did." Sarah said she didn't reply, just nodded. Sometimes that's enough. When she told Lily later, our daughter said, "That's good. Maybe she can be nice now. Children forgive faster than we deserve." I didn't forgive Margaret right away. I'm not sure I ever fully did, but over time, the anger thinned, like fog lifting. One morning, I realized I'd gone a whole week without thinking about her. That felt like freedom. In the spring, Lily asked if she could start riding her bike to the park. It wasn't far, just a few blocks. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed no, but then I saw the look on her face, that quiet defiance. The same look Sarah gets when she's decided something, so I said yes. The first day she rode off, Scout trotting beside her, I stood in the driveway with my hands in my pockets, watching until she disappeared around the corner. For a moment, I felt the same fear I did the day she fell, but it didn't crush me this time. It just reminded me how precious that ordinary courage is, the courage to keep living. Sometimes at night, when the house is still, I replay everything. The sound of the chalk, the curb, the sirens. But I also remember what came after. The way my daughter smiled through a swollen lip, how she learned to color sidewalks again. And maybe that's what we're meant to hold on to. Not the moment we break, but the proof that we kept going. A year has passed since the day my daughter hit the pavement. Seasons rolled through this neighborhood like nothing happened. Lawns stayed trimmed, mailboxes got repainted, The HOA newsletters kept arriving with their tidy fonts and pastel headers. On paper, everything's back to normal, but I see the cracks, even if no one else does. The curb still carries a faint line, a darker patch where the blood once dried before the rain came. I don't point it out to Lily when we walk past. She's stopped noticing it, and that's enough for me. I notice the light, though. The way the morning sun hits that same stretch of concrete and turns it gold. Maybe that's what healing looks like, the same place, just seen differently. I still wear my badge every day, still sit behind the same desk at the precinct, but I don't see the job the same way anymore. Before, justice meant process. Now, it means people. Small moments of mercy, patience, understanding. When I train new officers, I tell them something I never used to. You can't fix pain with a report. You can only stop it from spreading. They don't always understand, but one day they will. Lily turned 11 last month. We threw a small party in the backyard. Sarah baked her favorite, chocolate cake with too much frosting, and the neighbors came, the ones who'd gone silent before. They brought gifts, laughter, apologies folded into their smiles. Lily didn't hold grudges. She handed everyone a slice of cake and said, "It's okay now." That's the thing about kids. They don't know how to carry bitterness yet. They just know how to move forward. When everyone left, I stood by the fence as the sun went down. The tulips by Margaret's old driveway were blooming again, taller this year, brighter. The new owners planted marigolds along the edge, their orange petals swaying in the breeze. Sarah came up behind me, slid her arm around my waist. "She'd be proud of you," she said. "Who?" I asked. "Lily," she said, "for not letting this turn you cruel." I didn't answer right away. The truth was I'd come close. There were nights when the anger sat so heavy in my chest I couldn't sleep. Nights when I thought about how easy it would have been to let rage do what law couldn't. But then I'd remember Lily in that hospital bed, her hand clutching Scout's fur, whispering, "Don't let her come near me." That kind of fear doesn't fade because someone goes to court. It fades because someone chooses not to keep it alive. So, I made a choice. Not to forget, but to forgive, quietly, from a distance. Sometimes I drive past the community center where Margaret does her service hours. I never stop, never go inside. But once I saw her through the window, stacking canned food, shoulders hunched, hair gray at the roots. She looked smaller somehow. Ordinary. I remember thinking, this is how consequences really look. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet, lonely, human. I didn't feel triumph, just relief. Life has a way of folding tragedy into routine. Lily's braces are smaller now. She barely uses her walker. Every morning she packs her backpack, feeds Scout, and waves at me from the driveway, the same way she used to before all of this started. "Be safe," she says. It hits different now. I think she says it not because she's afraid, but because she understands what it means, how fragile safety really is, how easily it can be taken. And I say it back every time. There's a small photo on my desk at work. One of Lily and Scout sitting on the curb, their backs to the camera. The sidewalk beneath them is covered in chalk drawings. Hearts, stars, uneven letters spelling "be kind." I keep that picture there to remind me of the line between power and compassion, between the rules we enforce and the humanity we protect. It also reminds me of what I almost lost. Not just my daughter, but the part of myself that believes people can change. Maybe that's the hardest kind of justice, the kind that doesn't end in punishment but in perspective. Last week, Lily came home with a certificate from school. Outstanding citizenship. I asked her what she did to earn it. She said, "A kid in my class fell, and I helped him up before the teacher got there." I smiled. "That's all it takes?" She nodded. "Sometimes people just need help standing." I looked at her. at the gap in her smile where new teeth would soon go, and I thought, that's it. That's the whole lesson, wrapped in a child's words. Sometimes people just need help standing. The neighborhood looks the same now. The lawns, the mailboxes, the trimmed hedges. But I see it differently. Every small act of kindness feels louder. Every wave from a neighbor feels like a quiet apology. And when I walk past the curb where it all happened, I don't see blood anymore. I see chalk dust. It's faded now, pink and blue, just barely there, but I leave it. I don't sweep it away, because it reminds me of who we were before everything broke, and who we are now, after we learned how to piece ourselves back together. Sometimes, at night, when the street is still, I stand by the window and watch the lights from the houses shimmer in the distance. It's the same view I've seen for years, but something in it feels softer now, more honest. I don't hate this neighborhood anymore. I don't even hate Margaret. I just carry the story, not as a wound, but as proof that we made it through. And every morning, when Lily waves from the curb and says, "Be safe, Daddy," I smile and whisper the only answer that feels true. We are.